One of the most commonly asked questions that come across my YouTube channel and Facebook group and my paid coaching students and all that, one of the most often asked questions is to be given some kind of direction or guidance on what you should do in your life. Like, what's my path? Where do I go? What am I supposed to be doing here? I'm experiencing this spiritual awakening. How do I know what my life's purpose is? And this question, the answer is very, shall we say, paradoxical, which shouldn't come as any surprise to any one of you watching who are at least even just somewhat familiar with spiritualism in general, which is non-duality. Spiritualism, in the purest sense, is not an ideology, it's not a belief system, it's not a religion, and I'm not saying any of those things are bad. That's just not what this is. Spiritualism is the great reconciler, right? So non-duality is that which reconciles paradox. And you, my friend, are non-duality. Who you are beyond the body and the mind. You're not a story. You're not a history. You're not the personality, the ego mind. You are not the thinker. You are not that which is seeking your life's path. The seeker is the mind. And to the mind, that answer may sound very deflating, discouraging, but don't be discouraged. So, how to find your life's path is a paradox, because is there a path? Is there something for you? Yes. There is a path. There is a purpose for you, right? And the thinker, the mind, the ego personality, it believes, which you are not that. Remember, you are consciousness. You are not the mind. You are not that which seeks a purpose or a path. You are the silent witness of that which does the seeking. That's spiritualism. That's non-duality. That's consciousness. That's your soul. Okay. So, there is a path. The seeker, the mind, seeks the path. There is one, yes. Also, there is not. You actually are creating it. And those things are not opposed, it turns out. When you remember that you are the consciousness, when you remember that you are the silent witness, this paradox is resolved. This paradox is settled. It is solved by the monad, the non-duality, the single source of consciousness, which is the true self. It's in here. So, how do I navigate these two seemingly diametrically juxtaposed philosophies? Well, let's start with that there is no path, there is no purpose, and then we'll talk about there is one. And we have to go through many levels of self. And there are levels of self. Like, if I was to ask you who you are and keep prying a little, we would have many conversations. You would say, well, I am a mortal person. Or you would say, I am a personality. That is an operation of self. We call it the separate self. There's also the true self, which is the non-duality consciousness. There is the higher self. There's the three-part triune being, body, mind, soul, which I suppose you could say is the mortal person. So it depends on what part of the whole, W-H-O-L-E, depends on what part of the whole you're looking at when you're looking at it, if you're looking at it. So it's kind of relative. But as long as you remember that ultimately you are the true self, you are the consciousness, you can navigate through all these things. So if there is no purpose, then what could be as the true self? Well, the true self is the creator. You're creating your reality and you get to choose. Well, what do I choose? Honestly, it's really kind of arbitrary. But this is the fine line between being a creator and finding a path that seems to have already been laid out for you. Because if to choose what you're going to create is completely arbitrary, then what would you most likely choose anyway? Well, you probably would have some context. There probably would be some kind of momentum. There probably would be something in place already, right? You may look at your life situation and find satisfaction over here and maybe some dissatisfaction over here. And you're looking at these two things and you're saying, what serves me? That's the question. You could write that down. Type it down in the comments section down below and type it out in as many different forms as you can think of. What serves me? What do I want to create? Be pragmatic and look at the opportunities that are before you, both good and bad, right? The things that are working and the things that are not working. And you look at that context, you look at that momentum, you look at that path that you already see underneath your feet and you realize, I know exactly what to do. You know, it's like, how did I end up here doing what I'm doing, right? As a spiritual teacher? Well, I kind of looked at my talents and I looked at the experience that I was going through. And I said, I've got to show this to people. I've got to tell people about this. And that's what I did. But if you take a step back and look at that, it's really quite random. It's really pretty arbitrary. How are you going to know ultimately what your life's purpose is? Well, the best answer is incredibly frustrating to the ego. Because the best answer is, when you are lying on your deathbed and you're looking back at the story of your life, you'll realize what your life's purpose is. Your life's purpose is what's done. So again, this very subtle relationship between being a creator and finding yourself already on an existing path. You already have some momentum, guys. So if you don't like the momentum that you have, acknowledge that, right? So that's going back to the question of asking, what is it that serves me? Does this serve me? Yes or no? I'm looking at the momentum and I don't like it. All right, what can I do? Not making yourself a victim and saying, this is happening to me, but rather being pragmatic and saying, well, it's not happening to me, it's happening for me. What can I do? Because if you're looking for a path, all I would say to you is look no further than what's under your feet right now. You're already walking. You are going somewhere, which means that ultimately spiritualism takes you to a place that is not a place. This is the pathless path, right? When we say, I'm on a true spiritual journey or I'm on a spiritual path, well, that's a good conversation starter, and that's fine. But to really understand what that is, you kind of have to go beyond that label. And that's when you realize that that label is just a figure of speech. The true spiritual journey is a good figure of speech, but a figure of speech nonetheless. Now that we've started this conversation, we recognize that there's no journey. There's just the ground under your feet. And if you're truly remembering who you are as a spiritual being inhabiting a physical body who wears a personality, a mind, like a gown, you can start using it to your advantage. And the spiritual being that you really are is here now, living in this moment, looking at what is. And what is, that's the path. That's your momentum. That's the answer to the question, what is my path? Look around you. Look at the momentum. Look at the advantages and disadvantages in your life. And ask yourself, what can I do? And it is at that moment that you remember who you really are, a creator. So, is there a path? Yes. Is there a path? No. You create it. Look at the clay in front of you and build a pot. Build a mansion, a fortress, whatever you'd like, my friends. You are that powerful. Have a wonderful week. I'll see you next time.